What black market did kids at your school run? Story 1. During elementary school in the 80s, many candies weren't individually wrapped for resale in stores. Think Warheads, etc. I bought bulk packs of candy, didn't matter what kind, although atomic fireballs were my cash cow. I individually packed them, or maybe a couple to a pack, depending on the candy. I used those tiny Ziplocs you see people use for Being around adults a little devoid of scruples, I was able to get those in bulk from a local head shop called High in the Hill. It was a surreal time looking back. I was the only supplier for a solid year in 4th grade. I made so much bank for a 10-year-old that it was insane. I'd make $100 a week just off of atomic fireballs. The bulk jugs were about $5 or $6 each wholesale, and at a quarter each, it worked out to be about $60 a jug profit if I recall. Luckily, school came easy to me because it was a full-time job keeping stock, packaging products, counting piles of change, budgeting, keeping a bank register. Mom got a separate account that I used for my money, dodging the man, etc. It was turbulent as I never really had a group of friends as a kid, but in the 4th grade, I was the man. Going from having no real good friends and having my time divided by either being picked on or ignored to becoming the belle of the ball was surreal. Even at the time, I was able to realize what was going on. Their smiles were all fake, their interest was not in me, but rather what was in my bag any given day. Girls were not saying hello because they were being polite or even the least bit interested in talking to me. They were just waiting for their turn for their fix. That denim bag got more attention than I ever dreamed of. I was just along for the ride. I had laid the groundwork and provided the blueprint. When the 5th grade started, there was competition, but they were weak. They would always sell out or only buy enough to make a few bucks here and there, largely selling lollipops or pre-packed stuff, Hershey's Kisses, Bit-O Honey or Tootsie Rolls, whatever they could grab at the store before school. It was amateur hour. They had me a mockery of something I took seriously as a 10-year-old can take something. They closed up shop pretty quickly after the school year began. The fast life and fast money were over. The excitement wasn't there. The smiles weren't as big. Kids came to me as a last resort. They bought the popular kids completely out before looking my way. It was like flipping a switch. On my first day without the bag, I had a few kids ask if I was holding, but once word got around that I was out of the game, everything went back to normal. No friends, no conversation, no one to sit with at lunch or on the bus. No one is interested, fake or otherwise. It was the first time I had ever really witnessed the dynamic of being disingenuous. I had always been authentic, and after it was all over, I was happy to stay that way. I've never really recounted this time to words. As it turns out, I learned a lot of life lessons in the 4th grade. What a ride. If he'd swap the candy with and add some gang violence, it'd make a good movie. Story 2. We'd created an entire black market currency and economy based on rocks. I used to manage one of 3 mining operations that were running concurrently in the elementary school playground back in the mid to late 90s. The school was located in a small town in southeast Tennessee, rural and bordered by the Cherokee National Forest. The shinier or smoother the rock, the more valuable it could be. Rocks were traded between kids and their peers for snacks, drinks, homework bribes, and even protection from bullies. Whoever controlled the rocks controlled the playground. My operation had the largest kids, using the biggest boulders that were chipped into rounded points to break up the largest rocks down to manageable size for a bunch of little kids. And we had the most hands with sticks and straight-edged rocks, for digging and dirt displacement. At the end of a day of work, we would place a huge rock on top of our mining hole, too big for almost anyone to lift, besides a select few guys that all worked for me. Of course, I'm sure any of the 4th, 5th, or 6th graders could have, at the time, had they cared to. 2 other operations existed. One that was made up of all girls, though their rock output was shabby at best, and another group did their work inside of the dome-shaped jungle gym, providing the most protection from intruders and thieves, while also providing line-of-sight obstruction to the teachers and others. As a manager, I would walk the edge of the playground looking for strong sticks and perfect digging rocks, because the durability of sticks and pieces of chipped rock required a pretty steady supply of unbroken tools to work with. On the occasion that the classes had recess at different times, a lot of thievery and sabotage would happen. Rocks would get stolen and mining holes would get filled with trash and debris. I recently visited the old school, which was closed in the mid-2000s and is now abandoned and has fallen into disrepair. The hole, though, it's still there. All this time, they still haven't fixed the impact my class and others had in that old playground. That's all about I can remember from the experience, but I do still have my own personal collection of rocks from that playground that I took home bit by bit over many years in elementary school. A box full of stupidity and imagination. I mean, if you swap rocks for money, that's basically how monetary systems work. Hey, by the way, this video is sponsored by me and my friends at Rufus Rugs. We create custom, hand-tufted rugs that perfectly reflect your style. So whether you want to get one of our thumbnails as a rug for, research purposes, or maybe you just want to get some cool anime-style rugs for your room, check out Rufus Rugs by clicking the first link in the description. Story 3. My high school had a film club that would shoot short films, thus needing some equipment. The teacher in charge of it would raise money for it by buying bulk boxes of candy bars and Pop-Tarts at Costco and selling them between classes for $1 each. He always had a line at the door of his classroom. Eventually, he got shut down because the cafeteria manager complained that students buying snacks at school apparently kept them from buying the pig slop food the cafeteria served. Story 4. These little game coupons that our teacher gave out for winning class quiz games. Right when people were starting to get scanners or printers in their own homes, some kid made copies of his coupons and sold or traded them to other students. If you're wondering what the coupons could be traded for, it was usually a piece of candy or a pencil with a fun print or something similar. I think the kids ended up getting caught about 2 weeks into the scheme. And that's how they first learned about inflation. Story 5. Silly Bandz. This was late middle school for me. They were so highly coveted in our school that, if you had rare ones, you'd rather get shot in the foot than give them away. I remember the fantasy pack was rare and came with bands shaped like a genie and unicorn and that stuff. I only knew 2 kids that had that pack and everyone was gagging to trade with them. Of course, that didn't happen. So effectively, in the inner workings of my middle school, a caste system was created from rubber bands. All silly bands are equal, but some are more equal than others. Story 6. Nintendo games. Some kids sold them off for like 10 or 15 bucks a pop. I don't know where he got them from, but he said he just told his dad what he wanted and his dad would get it for him. He'd ask for the same ones over and over and it didn't matter. He'd end up with 5 copies and he'd just sell 4 of them. Either the kid was the most spoiled brat in history or his dad was straight up stealing them anyhow. Anyways, I could never get any. I had a Sega, but I remember that kid making a whole lot of money in grade 3. Story 7. This girl Danielle convinced my best friend and me, along with some other people, that she could forever change the taste of saliva in our mouths, so that our saliva would taste like watermelon, cotton candy, bubblegum, etc. forever. She made us wait a couple of days so we could really think about what flavor we wanted in our mouth forever. For example, she would tell us, "Are you sure you always want everything you eat to have a hint of watermelon?" Anyways, after a couple of days and we picked a flavor, she charged us money. I can't remember how much, but it was probably 50 cents or something. She made us chew on all this crazy stuff like paper clips, erasers, and other things. Obviously, her saliva never changed flavor and she stopped this. But I worked at Starbucks a couple of years ago in my hometown and she came in and didn't even recognize me. And all I could think about was how that girl had me chewing on paper clips. Was she head of her own religion by then? Story 8. Apple laptops in middle school. Some had iTunes, some didn't, and the kids wanted it, so I apparently was the only one who knew how to transfer the installer with my USB. I put it on everyone's laptop for gifts, favors, etc. in return. Got caught by the sub that day. I told her it was my flash drive and I could do whatever I wanted with it, and that's how I got my second attention of my life. Gifts were typical middle schooler stuff: Yu-Gi-Oh cards, fruit snacks, best food trades during lunch, gain in popularity, and hang out with the cool people. Obviously, they were taking advantage of me, but I didn't mind. Story 9. I was in elementary school when Pogs were big. Everyone had cool slammers and stuff, but I didn't have money for good ones. My dad made one out of a half-inch mild steel for me and used an engraving pen to make a simple pattern. Everyone was asking me where I got them from. I didn't want to lose my unfair edge, but I also knew I could make money. My dad had a big sheet of this half-inch steel. I told him I was the only one who could get them. I sold them for 15 bucks a pop. My dad kept 10 and I got 5, and that's when I learned what overhead was. Story 10. At my school, they took all sweets out of the vending machines and replaced them with healthy snacks. In the local town, there was a sweet shop where you could buy a kilo of mixed sweets for £5. So every week I would go there and buy 1 pound of small paper bags and spend the Sunday night before school repackaging them all ready for the week ahead. Come Monday, I would go into school and load my bag up every day selling the bags for 50p. This is like a G-rated version of repacking and selling. Story 11. I ran it. For a few spare years in elementary, books got banned in the classroom. Not blacklisted books, but literally books in general. They were far too distracting. Even though most kids read when done with work, etc., I started smuggling books to school and peddling them out to kids. It started out innocently. I had loads of Hank the Cowdog books that I was super into and I hid them in my desk. And I loaned them to close friends when asked, but soon the entire class knew. And that spread to the school. I became a full-time book smuggler. I had a system where there was a 2-week borrowing limit, kept a log of who, what book, when, ran a teensy little library for myself, basically, and I made sure these kids were treating the books fairly. If anything came back damaged, they were banned from borrowing. Keep this up until middle school, which was considerably less totalitarian. Books banned at a school? I don't think the administrators understand the point of one. I also don't think you can keep watching this video without leaving a like on it and subscribing to the channel. So do it now. Story 12. So I just heard this story from one of my father's employees. We'll call him Fitz. When Fitz was in 5th grade, he sold cinnamon toothpicks that had soaked in cinnamon extract. He made a lot of money. Well, this girl Karen wanted to get in on the action. She started selling toothpicks too. Her older brother also had a toothpick business on the side. Karen's brother liked to sell toothpicks that had been soaked in acid. You can see where I'm going with this. One morning, Karen grabbed the wrong toothpicks and sold them to her 5th grade classmates. 5th graders, tripping their off. Fitz told me everyone was sweating profusely and a few children began to cry late into the day. The local sheriff was called and the whole thing fell on Fitzy. 5th grade Fitz was like, "Screw this. Karen's brother is a junkie weirdo and Karen sells toothpicks." The school settled with giving both students 2 weeks of in-school suspension. I don't know what happened to the brother. Story 13. Marbles were big at my primary school. Real big. It got to the stage where they were only allowed for 3 months a year as we would no longer discuss anything but the game we had or the make we wanted to pay for. That was marble season. Now you could buy a big bag of cat eyes from the supermarket, but they wouldn't get you far. To play the high-stakes games, you needed a speckled egg, a glitter bomb, a tidal wave, or something exotic, but those suckers were pricey. We poor kids couldn't afford those things, so we secretly gambled our marbles through the year so when marble season opened, we had amassed enough marbles to really be ahead of the game. Being caught with marbles outside of marble season was bad, real bad. One kid got 5 strokes with a cane. This being so, it was a big risk to hide in the shadows of the trees and sling those little grass balls about. Not only did it hone your skills for the season start, but you got good at taking the shot and then acting nonchalant. Marbles were currency. You could trade lunches with them or buy time on playground equipment. There was a good reason they banned marbles at my school. We turned it into some sort of mafia stuff. 5 strokes with a cane? Holy crap. When and where was this guy at elementary and why does nobody point this out? Story 14. I forgot when I started. 5th grade, 8th grade. I know I was doing it as a 10th grader. We lived in a small farming community, but my dad worked a couple of hours away in the city. He'd stop at Sam's and buy me a box or two. I sold them for 25 cents each, or 5 for $1. It got to the point where I could easily sell 50 per day. I had regulars who I would save certain flavors for and everything. You could order for the next day even. I ended up and got caught by the bus driver as a 10th grader, near the end of the school year I think, but I don't remember exactly. She must have made a stink about it to the school because 5th period came, right after lunch, and an announcement came across the PA system. I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, "It has come to our attention that there are students who are involved in economic activity at school. This is not allowed. Students are only authorized to sell things officially offered by school clubs, teams, etc." I was in the midst of selling right then. The teacher in 5th period was really cool, and as long as I was done by the time he started his lectures, he didn't mind. He was one of those teachers who was cool like that, but he also had a serious side. So afterward, he let me quickly finish and said never again. The entire school, at least the students, knew who was being called out. That was the end of that. Before you ask, no, I don't remember how much I bought them for exactly. However, I remember paying like $5 per box at the start, perhaps up to $6.50 or so by the end. Story 15. Our high school had homework passes redeemable across all classes. You could use them as either one free pass for a homework assignment or 1 day delay on a large report. They even had a void message if copied. The teachers got them from the principal at the beginning of each quarter, and they passed them out with wild abandon to anyone showing interest in class. The market was flooded. I'd buy them from kids for $2 each, then I'd wait. At the end of the quarter, larger reports would be due. Rich kids would buy them back from me for $25 to $50 each. I once made $370 in the last 5 days of the quarter. Whatever I earned, I'd typically only use a total of $15 to $20 to buy the next wave of homework passes. The rest was mine to keep. It all started with a single 75-cent investment. That was the only bit of money I ever paid from my own pocket to keep it going. Story 16. I was a Pokémon card smuggler. In 6th grade, my friend's dad overheard my friend and I talking about how much our Pokémon cards were worth. He was shocked to learn some were worth $10 to $20 a piece. He made the comment, "Shame they won't be worth that much when you go to sell them." That comment stuck with me, and a few days later I started selling my cards at school. I made a list of everything I had with prices next to them. I passed the list around during class, and kids would meet up with me between classes to buy what they wanted. I was making crazy amounts of money for a middle schooler, and before long, parents were complaining that their kids were skipping lunch because they were spending their lunch money on Pokémon cards. So the school banned them. But I still had a good bit of inventory to move. I did all kinds of things to avoid getting caught. I hid cards in a box of crayons, I put a few sheets of sleeves in the middle of a binder full of legit notes, and I even hollowed out an old textbook to hide all my cards. Despite getting searched 3 to 5 times over the next few weeks, my cards were never found and I was able to sell all of them before Christmas break. I ended up making close to $800 and was able to buy my entire immediate and extended family Christmas gifts with my own money for the first time. Once all the other kids learned how much money I had made, they were blown away and suddenly everyone was selling their cards. The problem was no one was buying them anymore. I always thought it would be cool to hollow out some kind of hardcover and hide stuff in there, but I never actually did it. Story 17. I used to deal in whiteboard markers for teachers in high school. One teacher had a tendency to hoard them, leaving none for the other teachers. I would take markers from him and provide them to other teachers in need. While there was no formal payment, I was given a little bit more leniency at times, e.g. requests to leave the classroom for a moment, etc. Once the marker would start squealing on the whiteboard because it was almost empty, I'd get teachers giving me a nod as if to say, "You got the goods?" I'd then supply them with a marker color of their choosing, usually black. It was actually a lot of fun. I never heard teachers talk about my systems or chastise me for taking markers. Story 18. My school was an extremely conservative Christian boarding school. Things that were forbidden were, by no means a complete list, jeans for girls, shorts for everyone, candy and sort of food in the dorms, cell phones, any form of gaming system or TV or movies, playing non-Christian songs and musical instruments, clothes made by popular brands, A&F and Hollister, etc. Naturally, there were a few students who started selling food, candy, and A&F and Hollister clothes. Why people bought these from them, I don't know, but they made huge amounts of money. A lot of the kids at that school were rich doctors' kids, so there was plenty of money to go around. One guy sold a box of Altoids for $15. Story 19. I was the dirty magazine dealer when I was in middle school in the 80s. First, I found my parents' corn stash. Boxes and boxes and boxes stashed. Basement boxes by the washing machine and under the Civil War swords, guest bedroom under the bed, at least 50, standing cabinet in the kitchen, cabinets near the ceiling, all over the bedroom, under the china. We were riddled with it. Yeah, I went through my parents' bedroom. There were hundreds of magazines in the house and I was 11. Only God and my parents knew what was in there and I had to find out. After I had gotten bored of some, I started selling them to other kids, $20 each in 1984 money. The Melon magazine market was booming, selling to other adolescents. I had a client base and had to get more. I'd go into a bookstore and ask for the most esoteric book that I could imagine. The clerk would go check in the back and I'd stuff all the Penthouse and Playboy mags in my bag and book it. Maybe a comic book too. Treat yourself. Many years later, I returned to my hometown and went to that bookstore. I wanted to apologize and try to make up for it somehow. It was gone. Sorry about that, Walden Books. We were boys and you had melons. What were his parents doing with massive caches of corn laying around the house? Definitely not each other, that's for sure. Story 20. I and 3 other friends, all Asian, sold those Asian jelly straws. Something non-Asian kids were unfamiliar with but were in love with when discovered. Caramel apple pops and Mexican lollipops. Large Latin community and saw the opportunity to make more money. Covered in tahini in middle school. Each straw was 25 cents, 5 for $1, and pops would go for 75 cents to $1 depending on the demand. We would each have a jar of jelly straws in our own locker, a bag of pops, and a small box of quarters and cash. Every period, we would restock our backpacks and sell them while walking to and from class and in our class period. It was great. As a middle schooler, $20, split between 4 of us, $5 per kid a day was the equivalent of making 6 figures now in adult life. Life was great, until one day my friend's locker got broken into. Someone had watched over his shoulder when he put his locker combination in and came back later. They took all the snacks, all the cash, about $100 worth, and everything else in the trash. The school eventually banned the jelly straws but not the pops. A large Latin community still brought their own to eat as snacks, and made students who got caught reselling snacks get suspended. My 3 friends and I were content back then. We had made roughly $2,000 from our classmates and still got to eat the Asian straws at home. Now we work 40+ hours weeks to pay rent and eat fast food. Growing up sucks. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. Teachers, what student was so smart it's scary? Story 3 was horrifying. See you on that video.